The day my parents disowned me, it was raining. Not the gentle kind that makes everything smell fresh and clean, but the harsh, bitter type that soaks through your clothes and chills you to the bone. Looking back, it was fitting weather for what was about to happen. I'm Julia, and at 22, I thought I had my whole life figured out. I was wrong about a lot of things, but not about the choice that changed everything. You're keeping it? Mom's voice cracked like she'd been slapped. The pregnancy test sat between us on the kitchen counter, like a bomb about to detonate. What about medical school? What about your future? I can do both, I said, my hand instinctively moving to my still flat stomach. Other women manage it. Dad slammed his coffee mug down so hard I jumped. Other women have husbands, Julia. Where's the father? He's not in the picture, I said quietly. And he won't be. Won't be? Mom's laugh was hollow. Of course he won't be, because you won't tell us who he is. For all we know, you don't even know. Don't. My voice was sharper than I intended. Don't finish that sentence. This isn't how we raised you, Dad said, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. This isn't what we sacrificed everything for. Coming to this country, working ourselves to the bone, just so you could throw it all away? I'm not throwing anything away, I insisted. I can still be a doctor. I can still— No, Mom cut in. You can't. Not like this. Not alone. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched their faces, faces I'd known and loved my whole life, transform into masks of disappointment and disgust. There's a solution, Dad said finally. A simple one. Then you can continue with your life as planned. I knew what he meant. My hand pressed harder against my stomach. No. Then you leave us no choice. Mom's voice was ice. If you insist on ruining your life, you won't do it under our roof. You won't do it with our support. You're throwing me out? The words felt foreign in my mouth. You're choosing to leave, Dad corrected, by choosing this mistake over your family. 8 years later, I still remember every detail of that day. The way the rain drummed against the windows, the smell of Dad's coffee going cold, the sound of my footsteps on the stairs as I packed what I could carry. My friend Penelope took me in that first night. She was already a single mom herself, struggling but surviving. They'll come around, she said, holding me while I cried. Once they meet their grandchild, they'll change their minds. They didn't. Walker was born on a Tuesday morning, all red-faced and perfect. I sent them pictures. They went unopened. I sent birthday cards, Christmas cards, updates about his first steps, his first words. Nothing. I finished medical school somehow. Between student loans, part-time jobs, and endless nights of studying while Walker slept, I made it work. Not the way I planned, but I made it work. Mommy, look! Walker's voice snapped me back to the present. He was waving a drawing from his art class, all bright colors and crooked lines. It's us! I smiled at the stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands. No empty spaces where grandparents should be. Walker had never known any different. It's beautiful, baby, I said, pinning it to our cramped apartment's fridge, right next to his perfect spelling test from last week. Can we have pizza tonight? He asked, already moving on to his next thought, the way only 8-year-olds can. Not tonight, sweetie. Remember, we're being careful with money this month. The heating bill had been higher than expected, and my resident's salary only stretched so far. He nodded, used to these conversations. That's okay. I like your spaghetti better anyway. I hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of crayons and playground dirt that always seemed to follow him home. Sometimes I wondered if my parents knew what they were missing. This beautiful, kind, brilliant little boy who made every struggle worth it. That evening, while Walker did his homework, I decided to finally clean out my winter coat pockets before donating it. It barely fit anymore, and Penelope knew someone who needed one. My fingers brushed against something in the left pocket, a forgotten lottery ticket from months ago. I almost threw it away, but Walker looked up from his math problems and smiled at me, that same smile that had given me strength through countless sleepless nights and empty bank accounts, and I thought, why not check? What's the worst that could happen? I had no idea then how that simple decision would change everything. Again. Mom, why are you staring at your phone like that? Walker's voice seemed to come from far away. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the numbers on my screen matching the crumpled ticket in my hand. Baby, go get Aunt Penelope from next door, right now. He must have heard something in my voice because he ran without questioning. Moments later, Penelope burst in, still wearing her nursing scrubs from her night shift. Julia, what's wrong? I wordlessly handed her my phone and the ticket. She looked back and forth between them 3 times before her eyes went wide. Holy shit, she whispered, then quickly covered her mouth, glancing at Walker. Is this real? I don't know, I managed. I can't think straight. 47 million, Penelope read out loud. After taxes. Julia, you're still looking at over $20 million. Walker tugged at my sleeve. Are we rich now, Mommy? I pulled him into my lap, my hands shaking. I don't know yet, sweetie. We need to make sure this is real first. The next few hours passed in a blur. The lottery office confirmed it was real. They connected me with a financial advisor named Alec, who spoke in calm, measured tones that helped ground me. The first thing you need to do is tell absolutely no one, Alex said during our emergency meeting that afternoon. Not your colleagues, not your neighbors, no one except those who already know. What about my family? I asked, then laughed bitterly. Never mind, they haven't spoken to me in 8 years. Alex's eyes softened. That might change once news gets out. Money has a way of bringing people out of the woodwork. He wasn't wrong. The very next day, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Julia, sweetheart? My mother's voice, so familiar yet so strange, made my stomach clench. We saw you on the news. I gripped the phone tighter. Did you? We've been thinking about you, about Walker. We miss you both so much. 8 years, I said, my voice trembling. 8 years of silence, and now you miss us? We were wrong, she said quickly. We know that now. Your father and I, we've changed. We want to make things right. I closed my eyes, remembering countless nights of crying myself to sleep, of explaining to Walker why he had no grandparents at his school events. Julia. Penelope stood in my doorway, concern etched on her face. She'd taken the day off to help me deal with everything. You okay? I covered the phone. It's my mother. Penelope's expression hardened. She knew everything they'd put me through. She'd been there for every tear, every struggle, every moment they should have been. We'd love to see you, Mom was saying. And Walker, your father's already talking about making up for lost time. We could have dinner this weekend? I'll think about it, I said finally. Please do, sweetheart. We love you. We always have. After I hung up, Penelope handed me a cup of coffee. You're not seriously considering it, are you? I don't know. I stared into the cup. Part of me wants to believe they've really changed. And the other part? Wants to tell them exactly where they can shove their sudden desire to reconcile. Walker came home from school then, bursting with energy. Mom, did you tell Grandma and Grandpa about the money? Can they come visit now? My heart broke a little. Of course he'd want grandparents. What child wouldn't? How about we focus on our plans first, I said, pulling him close. Remember what we talked about? His face lit up. A house with a backyard and a dog? That's right. I kissed his forehead. And you staying in your same school with all your friends. Later that night, after Walker was asleep, I sat with Alex's business card in one hand and my phone in the other. My mother had called 3 more times. Whatever you're thinking, Penelope said, joining me on the couch, remember how strong you've been without them. Remember who was there when Walker had pneumonia last year, who helped you study for your boards, who actually cares about you, not your bank account. My phone buzzed again. A text from my father this time. We should discuss your future plans. I know some excellent investment advisors. I showed it to Penelope, who snorted. Of course he does. You know what? I said, something hardening in my chest. I think I will meet with them. Julia. Not to reconcile, I clarified. I want to look them in the eyes when they try to manipulate their way back into my life. I want to see exactly what they're planning. And then what? I thought about Walker's drawing on the fridge, our perfect family of 2, about all the other single mothers out there struggling like I had, about karma and justice and the power to finally stand up for myself. And then, I said, I'm going to make them regret every single day they pretended we didn't exist. The restaurant they chose was exactly the kind of place they'd always loved. All crystal glasses and white tablecloths. I deliberately wore jeans and a sweater, watching my mother's slight wince as I sat down. Julia, darling, she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me. You look healthy? Dad cleared his throat. Where's Walker? We were hoping to meet him. He's with Penelope, I said. I wanted to talk to you both first. That woman, Mom muttered, then caught herself. I mean, it's good you have friends. A waiter appeared with water and menus. My parents ordered wine. I asked for coffee. So, Dad said, leaning forward, we've been doing a lot of thinking about the past, about mistakes made on all sides. On all sides? I interrupted. What mistakes did I make exactly? Having a baby? Raising him alone? Being successful despite you abandoning us? Now, Julia, Mom started, but a new voice cut in. Sorry I'm late. A man in an expensive suit appeared at our table. Traffic was terrible. Julia, this is Xerxes, Dad said. He's our lawyer. We thought it might be helpful to have him here to discuss arrangements. I stared at them. You brought a lawyer to lunch? Just to help facilitate, Xerxes said smoothly, pulling out a chair. Your parents have been working on a comprehensive plan for family reunification. He pulled out a folder and started spreading documents across the table. My coffee arrived, and I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, watching this surreal scene unfold. We've drafted a proposal, Mom said eagerly, a way to make up for lost time. We could set up a trust for Walker, of course, and there's the matter of the family business. What family business? I asked. The one we're going to start, Dad said. Together, we've already looked at some properties. With your new resources and our experience, stop. My voice was quiet but firm. Just stop. They all fell silent, looking at me with varying degrees of confusion. Julia, Xerxes said, your parents are trying to build bridges here. Perhaps if you looked at the proposals, did they tell you how they kicked me out when I was pregnant? How they ignored every letter, every photo, every attempt I made to contact them for 8 years? Xerxes shifted uncomfortably. Mom jumped in quickly. We've apologized for that, darling. We were wrong. We want to make it right. Make it right? I laughed. By bringing a lawyer to ambush me? By making plans for my money before even asking how your grandson is doing? Now, that's not fair, Dad started, but I stood up. I need to use the restroom. In the hallway near the bathrooms, I leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths. Then I heard voices around the corner. Can't rush her too fast, Xerxes was saying. We need her to trust us before we suggest the investment structure. 8 years we waited. Mom's voice replied. We're not missing this opportunity. Once we get control of the accounts. Eliza, Dad interrupted. Someone's coming. I slipped into the bathroom before they could see me, my hands shaking as I gripped the sink. My phone buzzed. A text from Penelope. Walker wants to know if he's meeting his grandparents today. I looked in the mirror, seeing the hope in my son's eyes reflected in my memory. Then I remembered my mother's words. Once we get control of the accounts. Taking a deep breath, I texted back. No, but I think it's time to move forward with Plan B. When I returned to the table, I wore a carefully neutral expression. Sorry about earlier, I said, sitting down. This is all just overwhelming. Their faces lit up with poorly concealed triumph. Of course it is, sweetheart, Mom cooed. That's why you need family. Why don't you come over this weekend? Bring Walker, we can discuss everything properly. Actually, I said, I have a better idea. Why don't you come to my place next Friday? I'm having a small gathering. Some friends, some business associates. It would be a good opportunity to meet Walker in a comfortable setting. They exchanged glances. What kind of business associates? Dad asked carefully. Oh, just some people I've been talking to about investment opportunities. I smiled. You'll want to meet them, I'm sure. They agreed eagerly, exactly as I knew they would. As we said goodbye, my mother hugged me, whispering, We're so glad to have you back, darling. I hugged her back, thinking of the conversation I'd overheard, of the lawyer they'd brought, of 8 years of silence. Me too, Mom, I said. Everything's gonna be exactly as it should be. Walking to my car, I called Penelope. Contact Valerie at the social services office. Tell her Operation Karma is a go. You're sure? I thought of the documents Xerxes had brought, the plans they'd made for my money, the way they still hadn't asked a single real question about Walker. Oh yes, I said. I'm very sure. A charity for single mothers? Valerie leaned forward across her desk, her eyes sparkling. And you want to start with a $10 million endowment? Initially, I said, watching her expression shift from excitement to disbelief. We'll expand based on need and impact. This could help so many families, she breathed, already pulling up statistics on her computer. Housing assistance, childcare programs, educational support. Penelope, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. Tell her the best part. We're announcing it next Friday, I said, at a gathering where my parents will be present. Valerie looked up sharply. The same parents who abandoned me for being a single mom? Yes. I smiled. I want them there when I publicly pledge to support everything they condemned. That's deliciously petty. Valerie grinned. I'm in. We spent the next hour outlining programs and structures. Valerie knew the system inside and out, where the gaps were, which families needed the most help, how to make the biggest impact. My phone buzzed repeatedly during the meeting. Texts from my mother about dinner preferences, about Walker's favorite toys, about investment opportunities she and Dad had researched. They're love-bombing you, Penelope said as we left Valerie's office. Classic manipulation tactic. I know. I showed her the latest message. Your father's friend has an amazing real estate opportunity. Time sensitive. Can we discuss? They're getting desperate, Penelope observed. How much have you told them about your actual plans for the money? Nothing. They just assume I'll hand everything over to their experienced management. Back home, Walker was doing homework with his after-school sitter. He looked up as I entered. Mom, did you see Grandma's message? She wants to buy me a gaming system. I sat beside him. Honey, we need to talk about Grandma and Grandpa. Are they coming to your party? Yes, but I searched for the right words. Sometimes people act nice because they want something, not because they've changed. He considered this, his 8-year-old face serious. Like when Tommy only shares his snacks when he wants to play with my toys? Exactly like that. I hugged him close. I need you to trust me about this, okay? I trust you, Mom. He hugged me back. Can we still get a dog, though? Later that evening, Alec came by to review the charity paperwork. The anonymous donation has already been processed, he confirmed. It'll hit the news cycle tomorrow. How long until they figure out it was me? I asked. Given the amount and timing, your parents will know immediately. He shuffled some papers. Are you ready for their reaction? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Mom's number. Julia, she sounded breathless. Did you see the news? Someone just donated $10 million to help. People like you used to be. It wasn't, was it? I saw that, I said neutrally. Wonderful news for struggling families, isn't it? But, darling, that money could have been invested. Think of the returns we could have. We? She backpedaled quickly. I just meant as a family, we should discuss these decisions. Your father and I have experience. Mom, I interrupted. I need to go. Walker needs help with his homework. After hanging up, I turned to Alec. How's the media strategy looking? He checked his tablet. Press release goes out Monday. Local news is already interested in the human interest angle. Successful doctor giving back to the community. We can do interviews Thursday, right before your gathering. Perfect. I looked at the charity's mission statement, proudly displayed on top of the stack. Supporting single parents, breaking cycles of judgment. My phone buzzed again. Dad, this time. We need to talk about your financial decisions. This isn't what we discussed. We never discussed anything, I muttered. You okay? Penelope asked, returning from putting Walker to bed. Just thinking about Friday, about finally showing them who I've become without them. And who's that? I showed her my draft response to the press release. As someone who faced judgment and abandonment for being a single mother, I know firsthand how crucial support can be. This foundation isn't just about financial aid, it's about changing perceptions and breaking down the stigma that too many single parents face. That's who, I said, someone who turns pain into purpose. Penelope read it twice, then looked at me with tears in her eyes. They have no idea what's coming, do they? No, I said, thinking of the carefully laid plans, the press invitations, the stories I'd document, the truth I'd finally speak. But they will. My phone lit up with another message from Mom. We're just worried about you, darling. Let us help. I didn't reply. Friday would be my response to everything. The local news interview aired Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, my parents had called 17 times. You looked beautiful on TV, Mom gushed when I finally answered, though perhaps a bit casual for such an important announcement. I have this lovely designer. Did you hear what I said in the interview? I cut in, about why I started the foundation. Oh yes, very charitable, but darling, announcing it without consulting us first. Why would I consult you? A pause. Well, we're family, and with our business experience. Are you coming tomorrow? I interrupted again. Of course, your father's been talking about nothing else. He's bringing some investment proposals. Great, I said. See you then. The gathering was at a recently renovated community center, the first project my foundation had funded. As guests arrived, I watched my parents take in the reporters, the social workers, the group of single mothers Valerie had invited. Julia, Dad hissed, pulling me aside. What is all this? We thought this was a private family meeting. Did you? Funny, I don't remember saying that. Before he could respond, the center's director called for everyone's attention. Mom grabbed my arm. Darling, perhaps we should discuss things before any announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, the director continued, please welcome Dr. Julia, founder of the Breaking Cycles Foundation. Applause erupted. I gently removed my mother's hand and walked to the podium. 8 years ago, I began, I was disowned by my family for choosing to be a single mother. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. I was told I was throwing my life away, that I would fail, that no one would respect me. I paused, meeting their eyes in the crowd. They were wrong. Julia? Dad started to stand, but Xerxes pulled him back down. Today, I'm a successful doctor, raising an amazing son, and I'm using my lottery winnings, all of them, to ensure no other single parent faces the discrimination and abandonment I did. Cameras flashed. My parents sat frozen. The Breaking Cycles Foundation will provide housing assistance, childcare support, educational grants, and most importantly, a community that supports rather than shames single parents. More applause. I saw Penelope wiping tears, Walker beaming proudly beside her. And to kick off our mission, I'd like to introduce some people. I gestured to the side. These are the first 10 recipients of our housing grants. Each of them has a story similar to mine. Each of them has faced judgment, abandonment, and struggle. And each of them is proving, just like I did, that single parents are capable of extraordinary things. The recipients stood, some holding their children, all receiving thunderous applause. My mother's face had gone pale. Questions? I asked the crowd. A reporter stood. Dr. Julia, your parents are here today. How do they feel about your foundation? I smiled sweetly. Why don't we ask them? All eyes turned to my parents. Dad stood abruptly. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You're making a spectacle of private family matters. We came here to discuss business opportunities. To discuss controlling my money, I corrected, just like you tried to control my life. We were protecting you. No, I said firmly. You were protecting your reputation, your traditional values, your control, and now you're here for my money, not for me or Walker. Mom burst into tears, perfectly timed, perfectly dramatic. How can you say such things? We're your parents. Parents? Penelope stood up. Parents don't abandon their children. Parents don't ignore their grandchild for 8 years. Parents don't show up with lawyers and investment schemes only after their daughter wins the lottery. The reporters were scribbling frantically. Xerxes tried to intervene. Perhaps we should take this discussion private. No, I said. No more hiding. No more shame. Every dollar I won is going to help people who faced what I faced, to show them they're not alone and they're not wrong for choosing to be single parents. Dad's face had turned purple. You ungrateful. Security, I called calmly. Please escort my parents out if they can't maintain composure. As they were led away, Mom turned back. You'll regret this. You're making a huge mistake. No, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My only mistake was spending 8 years hoping you'd love me more than you loved your prejudices. After they left, the event continued. I met with grant recipients, gave interviews, watched Walker play with other children who understood exactly what it meant to have absent grandparents. My phone buzzed with a text from Xerxes. Your parents want to discuss damage control. I typed back, nothing to discuss. The truth isn't damage, it's freedom. Looking around at the community I'd built, the lives I was helping change, I finally felt free of their judgment, free of hoping for their approval, free to be exactly who I'd become without them. And it felt better than any revenge could have. The morning after the foundation launch, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. Her designer handbag was clutched tight against her chest like armor. Your father doesn't know I'm here, she said when I opened the door. Does it matter? I stepped aside to let her in. Coffee? Please. She perched on the edge of my couch, looking around the modest apartment. You could live somewhere so much nicer now. We're moving next month, a house near Walker's school. I handed her a mug. But that's not why you're here. No. She took a shaky breath. What you did yesterday. The publicity? Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation in the community? Your reputation? I laughed. That's what you're worried about? People are talking, Julia. The country club, the church. Is Grandma crying? Walker appeared in the hallway, backpack ready for school. Mom startled, as if she'd forgotten he existed beyond a concept. Walker, I brought you something. She pulled out a wrapped package. No thanks, he said quietly, moving closer to me. Mom says we shouldn't accept gifts from people who only want to be nice when it's convenient for them. Mom's face crumpled. That's not, I'm your grandmother, are you? Walker asked. Because my friend Tommy's grandmother comes to his baseball games and helps with school projects. You just showed up when Mom got money. I put my hand on his shoulder, proud and heartbroken at how clearly he saw the situation. Time for school, buddy. Penelope's waiting to walk you. After he left, Mom dabbed at her eyes with an expensive handkerchief. You've turned him against us. No, I said firmly. You did that yourself. 8 years of birthdays, Christmases, school plays. Where were you? We were hurt. You defied everything I had a baby. I slammed my coffee mug down. I didn't commit a crime. I didn't hurt anyone. I chose to be a mother, to work hard, to succeed despite you telling me I couldn't. And now you're punishing us. Punishing you? I gestured around. I built a foundation to help others, to turn what you did to me into something positive. That's not punishment. It's growth. My phone buzzed. A text from Valerie. 3 more news stations want interviews. The story's going national. Mom saw the message. You can still fix this. We can release a joint statement. Say it was all a misunderstanding. Get out. Julia, get out. I stood up. You still don't get it. This isn't about you anymore. It's about every other parent who's been shamed, abandoned, or judged for their choices. It's about breaking the cycle of conditional love that you taught me. She stood too, straightening her designer jacket. You'll regret this. Your father. He has connections. He can make things difficult. Is that a threat? It's a warning. From a mother who loves you. I opened the door. No, a mother who loves me would have been there when I was scared and alone, would have held her grandson when he was born, would have celebrated my graduation from medical school instead of pretending I didn't exist. Julia, please. Goodbye, Mom. After she left, Penelope came over. She'd heard everything from next door. You okay? No. I showed her my shaking hands. But I will be. Your mom's right about one thing, she said. Your dad's going to retaliate. I know his type. Let him try. I picked up my phone as it buzzed again. Another interview request. The truth is already out there. Penelope sat beside me. You know what's funny? My parents did the same thing when I got pregnant. Kicked me out, said I was ruining my life. You never told me that. They called last week, she continued, after your story hit the news, wanted to reconnect, asked if I needed money. What did you say? Told them to donate to your foundation if they really want to make amends. She smiled. They hung up. I hugged her tight. We did okay, didn't we? Without them? We did amazing, she pulled back. And now we're helping others do the same. My phone rang, Dad's number. I declined the call and opened my email instead. Dozens of messages from single parents across the country, sharing their stories, thanking me for speaking out. They can't hurt us anymore, I said, reading the messages. We're not alone, and we're not ashamed. No, Penelope agreed. We're just getting started. Another text from Valerie. Major talk show wants you and some grant recipients to speak next week. Ready to take this national? I thought of my mother's threats, my father's connections, their desperate attempts to control the narrative. Then I thought of Walker's words. People who only want to be nice when it's convenient for them. Yes, I replied. It's time everyone heard the whole story. The talk show's green room buzzed with nervous energy. 3 other single mothers sat with me, each selected by Valerie to share their stories. Sarah, kicked out at 16. Maria, widowed and shunned by her in-laws. Rebecca, who fled an abusive marriage. 2 minutes, a producer called. My phone lit up. Xerxes. Your father insists on speaking with you before you go on air. Not happening, I texted back. He's here at the studio. I looked up sharply, and there he was, pushing past security with Mom and Xerxes trailing behind him. Julia, he demanded, stop this nonsense right now. The other mothers tensed. Security moved forward, but I held up my hand. Let him speak, I said. Let everyone hear exactly what he has to say. Dad straightened his tie. I've been calling all week. You're dragging our family name through the mud, making us look like monsters. You're doing that all by yourself, Maria muttered. Dad whirled on her. This doesn't concern you. Actually, I stood up. It concerns all of us. Every parent who's been told they're not good enough. Every child who's been denied grandparents because of pride and prejudice. We're going live in 60 seconds, the producer called. Julia, Mom stepped forward. Please, we can fix this privately, as a family. We're not family, I said quietly. Family doesn't abandon each other. These women? I gestured to the other mothers. They're my family now. They understand what real support means. 30 seconds. Dad's face darkened. If you do this, if you tell these lies on national television... Lies? Rebecca stood up. Is it a lie that you kicked your pregnant daughter out? That you ignored your grandson for 8 years? Stay out of this, Dad snapped. No, Sarah joined in. We won't stay out of it. That's the whole point. We're done being silent, done being ashamed. Places everyone. The producer was gesturing frantically. Last chance, Dad growled. Stop this or what? I challenged. You'll disown me? Ignore me? Already done that. You have no power here anymore. Security finally stepped in, escorting them to the audience area. As we took our places on stage, I saw them sitting in the front row, faces tight with anger. The host opened with my story. The lottery win, the foundation, the family drama. Then she turned to me. Your parents are here today, she said. Would you like to address them? I looked directly at them. 8 years ago, you told me I was bringing shame to our family by choosing to be a single mother. Today, I want to tell you what real shame is. The audience was silent. Shame is turning your back on your child when they need you most. Shame is missing your grandson's entire life because of pride. Shame is only wanting a relationship when money is involved. That's not true. Mom stood up. We loved you. You loved your reputation more, I countered. And now you're angry because I'm telling the truth about what you did. Dad jumped up. You ungrateful little... The rest of his words were bleeped by the censors. The host intervened. Sir, please sit down or you'll be removed. Remove me? He thundered. Do you know who I am? I'll destroy this show. I'll destroy your foundation. Security moved in as he continued to shout threats. The cameras caught everything. His red face, my mother's tears, Xerxes trying desperately to control the situation. This, I said calmly into the sudden silence, this is exactly why we need to speak up. This is what so many single parents face. Control, manipulation, threats. But we're not victims anymore. We're survivors. We're success stories. The other mothers shared their stories next. With each one, I watched my parents shrink further into their seats, their carefully crafted image crumbling on national television. After the show, Valerie met us backstage, beaming. Donations are pouring in. Your father's outburst? Better publicity than we could have bought. He'll try to retaliate, Penelope warned, joining us with Walker. Let him, I said, hugging my son. We've already won. Mom? Walker looked up at me. Are Grandma and Grandpa going to be mad forever? I knelt down to his level. Probably, but that's their choice, just like supporting other families is ours. Good, he said firmly, because Tommy's mom needs help with his baseball uniform, and I told her about your foundation. I hugged him tighter, tears threatening. This was my legacy, not shame or silence, but strength and support. Not their conditional love, but a community built on understanding and acceptance. My phone buzzed one last time. Xerxes again. Your parents want to make a deal. I blocked his number without responding. We didn't need deals anymore. We had something better. We had truth. And this, I said, unlocking the door, is our new home. Walker ran inside, his footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. Penelope followed with a box labeled kitchen, while Maria and Sarah carried in bags of groceries for our moving day celebration. Mom, there's a tree house. Walker's voice carried from the backyard. Perfect for homework club, Maria said, her own kids already racing to join Walker outside. The house wasn't massive or luxurious, just a comfortable 4-bedroom with a big yard in a good school district. But it was ours, paid in full, with plenty left for the foundation. Mail's already coming, Penelope said, picking up an envelope from the floor. Her face darkened. It's from your parents' lawyer. I took the letter, but didn't open it. Instead, I pinned it to the kitchen bulletin board alongside the foundation's latest achievement, housing assistance for 50 single-parent families. Not today, I said. Today we celebrate. The doorbell rang. Valerie arrived with more volunteers from the foundation, carrying paint supplies and pizza. Soon the house filled with laughter and chatter as everyone picked rooms to paint. Did you see the news? Rebecca asked, rolling yellow paint onto Walker's bedroom wall. Your father's trying to start a competing foundation, something about traditional family values. Let him, I said. Our waiting list is already 300 families long. There's plenty of need to go around. Ms. Julia? Tommy, Walker's friend, poked his head in. My mom's here. She wants to talk to you. In the living room, Tommy's mother, Janet, stood nervously. I'm sorry to crash your moving day, but I got evicted. Tommy's dad stopped paying child support and, say no more. I pulled out my phone. Maria, can you check if Unit 3B is still available at the new housing complex? Within an hour, Janet was crying happy tears over approved emergency housing paperwork, while Tommy and Walker planned which games they'd play during their next playdate. This is what they'll never understand, Penelope said quietly, watching the scene. It's not about money, it's about community. The letters stayed pinned to the bulletin board as we painted and unpacked, as we ordered more pizza and the kids played tag in the backyard, as the sun set and our little community celebrated not just a new home, but a new kind of family. Finally, after everyone left and Walker was asleep in his freshly painted room, I took down the letter. Inside was a formal proposal. They would publicly apologize if I agreed to redirect foundation funds into a family-managed trust. They would acknowledge Walker if I gave them board positions. They would forgive me if I followed their plans. The doorbell rang again. This time, my mother stood there alone. Before you closed the door, she said quickly, I came without your father knowing. Why? She held out a small photo album. I found these pictures of you from before. I thought Walker might want to see what his mother was like as a child. I took the album but didn't invite her in. That's what you came to say? She hesitated. I watched you today, through the window. All those people, those families, they love you, really love you. Yes, I said simply, they do. We loved you too, she whispered. We just didn't know how to show it without controlling it. I looked at the album, then at the letter in my other hand. Love shouldn't come with conditions, Mom. I know that now. She turned to leave, then stopped. Julia, you're a better mother than I ever was. After she left, I sat on the porch swing, looking at childhood photos I'd almost forgotten existed. Walker's sleepy voice came from behind me. Is that you, Mom? I pulled him onto my lap, showing him pictures of a little girl who still believed in unconditional love. Yeah, that's me. You look happy. I was. I kissed his head. But I'm happier now. I took the lawyer's letter and ripped it into tiny pieces, letting them flutter into the recycling bin. Then I took out my phone and typed a message to our foundation's board. Tomorrow we announce our expansion. Double the housing units, triple the child care subsidies. Let's show them what real family values look like. Walker snuggled closer, yawning. Can Tommy stay over tomorrow? Of course. I rocked the swing gently, holding my son and my freedom and my peace all at once. That's what family does. The childhood photos showed what was lost, but looking around our new home, filled with paint smudges and pizza boxes and love without conditions, I saw everything I'd found instead. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. Sometimes the hardest goodbye leads to the most beautiful hello. Sometimes losing everything is just the beginning of finding something better.
In the midst of a sunny neighborhood, my small art studio sat snugly between two tall buildings. My name is Amelia, and this studio was my refuge. As I looked around, the familiar sight of paintbrushes, messy palettes, and canvases in various stages of completion greeted me. Here, I felt truly alive, losing myself in the world of colors and forms. Walking in through the door was my husband, Alex, his tall frame barely fitting through the doorway. His dark hair was a mess, probably from running his fingers through it all day at work, but his bright blue eyes always had a hint of mischief. "Hey," he said with a tired smile, dropping his briefcase by the door. "How was your day?" I sighed, looking over at a particular canvas. "It was good, but I'm struggling with this piece. I can't seem to get it right." Alex walked over, taking a closer look. "I think it's great," he said, trying to be supportive. "But what do I know? I can barely draw a stick figure." I chuckled. "Thanks for trying to make me feel better." Before we could continue, the sharp ring of the phone interrupted us. I picked it up, already dreading the voice I'd hear. Sure enough, it was Evelyn, my mother-in-law. "Hello, Amelia," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How are you?" "I'm fine, Evelyn. What can I do for you?" I replied, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. "I just wanted to see how my son is doing," she said. "Is he there?" Alex gestured for the phone, mouthing, "I'll handle it." Before handing it over, I couldn't resist a little jab. "He's here, and he's great. He always enjoys coming home to a supportive environment." There was a pause on the other end. "Well," she finally responded, "just make sure he stays that way. Put him on." Alex took the phone from me, shooting me a look that said, "Please don't start." "Hi, Mom," he began, and I tuned out the rest of their conversation, turning my attention back to my painting. After hanging up, Alex turned to me. "She's coming over tomorrow." I groaned. "Why? Does she need more ammunition to mock my art?" Alex put his arm around me. "I'll talk to her, okay? Just try to be civil." The next day, Evelyn arrived, and her entrance was as grand as always. Tall, with striking gray hair, she had an air of superiority that she wore like a second skin. "Hello, Amelia," she said, scanning the room with disdain. "Hello, Evelyn," I responded, gritting my teeth. Her eyes settled on my latest work. "What's this?" she asked, pointing at it. "It looks like a child's mess." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "It's a work in progress." Evelyn smirked. "Isn't everything here? I don't know why Alex supports this hobby of yours." It's not a hobby, I retorted. It's my passion. Alex walked in, sensing the tension. Ladies, can we please not do this today? Evelyn scoffed. I just don't see why you waste your time, Amelia. My son deserves better. With that, she turned and left the room. I sank into a chair, feeling deflated. Alex sat next to me, squeezing my hand. Ignore her, okay? Your art is amazing. I looked into his eyes, feeling grateful for his support. Thanks, I whispered. Life with Evelyn was like navigating a field of landmines. Every interaction was a potential explosion, and most days I felt emotionally drained by her constant jabs. Her favorite topic, of course, was my art. She never passed an opportunity to belittle it or ridicule me. One Sunday afternoon, Alex and I were in our living room. The sunlight streamed through our window, casting a warm glow across the room. I was sketching a new idea while Alex read a book. The peaceful moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. I'll get it, Alex said, setting his book down. He opened the door to reveal Evelyn holding a pie. I was in the neighborhood, she began, a hint of a smile on her lips. Thought I'd drop by? Thanks, Mom, Alex replied, taking the pie from her. Come on in. I forced a smile. Hello, Evelyn. She scanned the room, her gaze stopping at my sketchbook. More scribbles, Amelia? It's a concept sketch, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Evelyn smirked. I'll never understand modern art. It all looks so pointless. Alex intervened. Mom, can you please be respectful? She shrugged. I'm just giving my opinion. I didn't ask for it, I retorted. Evelyn leaned in closer, her voice dripping with condescension. I just worry about Alex. What kind of future will he have with a wife who spends her time drawing? Whatever this is. Alex stood up, placing himself between Evelyn and me. Enough, Mom. Amelia's work is important. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's worthless. Evelyn feigned surprise. I'm just concerned for my son. I stood up. And I'm concerned for my mental well-being. I don't need your negativity. Evelyn huffed. Fine, I'll leave. As she made her way to the door, she stopped and turned. One day, Alex will see you for who you truly are. I watched as she left, trying to shake off the weight of her words. Alex wrapped his arm around my shoulder. I'm sorry about her. I sighed. It's not your fault. I just wish she could see that there's value in what I do. Alex smiled. She may never see it, but I do, and I'll always be here to support you. The days following Evelyn's visit were tense. I found solace in my art, pouring all my emotions onto the canvas. Alex watched me work, always encouraging, always there. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting our room in hues of gold and crimson, my phone buzzed on the table. An unknown number flashed across the screen. Picking it up, I hesitated for a moment. Hello? The voice on the other end was soft and pleasant. Is this Amelia? Yes, speaking. Hello, Amelia. My name is Rebecca. I'm with the Ashton Art Gallery. We came across your work online and are very impressed. I blinked in surprise. The Ashton Art Gallery was one of the premier spots for modern art in the city. Really? Was all I could manage. Rebecca chuckled. Yes, really. We'd like to meet and discuss a potential exhibition. A wave of emotion washed over me. I'd love to. Great, Rebecca continued. How about this Friday at 3 p.m.? That works for me. Perfect. See you then. And Amelia, keep doing what you're doing. Your art is truly special. Hanging up, I turned to Alex, my face beaming. You won't believe who that was. He looked up, curious. Who? The Ashton Art Gallery. They want to discuss an exhibition for my paintings. Alex's eyes widened in surprise, and he pulled me into a hug. That's amazing. I knew they'd notice your talent. I laughed. I still can't believe it. He pulled back, his face serious. You deserve this, Amelia. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The news was like a shot of energy. I spent the next few days preparing, researching the gallery, and planning which pieces to discuss. The day of the meeting arrived, and I dressed carefully, choosing a simple but professional outfit. As I was about to leave, the phone rang again. Hesitating for a moment, I answered, "Hello?" It was Evelyn. "Amelia," she began, her tone different than usual, almost jealous. "I heard about the gallery." I was taken aback. "Yes, it's true," she scoffed. "We'll see how long that lasts." Resisting the urge to snap back, I replied calmly, "Thanks for the encouragement, Evelyn." She hung up without another word. Alex walked over, hearing the tail end of the conversation. "Don't let her get to you. Today's your day." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're right. Let's go." Walking into the Ashton Art Gallery, I was taken aback by its sheer grandeur. Walls adorned with vibrant paintings, sculptures strategically placed, and the subtle hum of quiet conversations filled the air. Rebecca, a tall woman with short, curly hair, greeted us with a warm smile. "Amelia, so good to meet you," she said, extending her hand. I shook it, my nerves still tingling. "Thank you for having me." Rebecca led us through the gallery, pointing out specific spots where she envisioned my paintings. "Your work," she began, "has this raw energy that we believe our audience will resonate with." I looked at Alex, who gave me an encouraging nod. "Thank you, Rebecca. That means a lot." She smiled. "Now, let's discuss the specifics. We were thinking of dedicating an entire section to your work for the upcoming exhibit." "That sounds incredible," I replied. Rebecca handed me a folder. "Here's a layout of the gallery and a tentative schedule. We need your pieces here by next month." I flipped through the pages, trying to mask my excitement. "This is thorough. I'll get started right away." The rest of the meeting was a whirlwind of discussions, from lighting preferences to wall colors. By the end, my head was spinning, but in the best possible way. As Alex and I walked back to our car, he turned to me, his eyes gleaming. "You did it!" I laughed. "We did it. I couldn't have done this without you." He grinned. "Now comes the hard part, selecting and preparing your pieces." Over the next few weeks, our apartment turned into a hive of activity. I was in a zone, finalizing paintings, choosing frames, and coordinating with the gallery. Every surface was covered with art supplies and sketches. One evening, while I was working on a particularly intricate piece, the doorbell rang. Alex went to answer it, and moments later, he returned with a familiar face. "Evelyn," I said, surprised. She looked around, taking in the chaos. "So, this is what preparation looks like." I hesitated for a moment, then replied, "Yes, it's a lot of work." Evelyn's eyes landed on a painting I had just finished. "This one's different." I walked over. "It's a new direction I'm trying." She studied it for a moment, her expression unreadable. Interesting." Before I could respond, Alex intervened. "Mom, why are you here?" Evelyn sighed. "I wanted to see what all the fuss was about." I took a deep breath. "I'm proud of my work, Evelyn." She nodded. "It's evident. Well, I should be going." As she left, I felt a mix of emotions. While it wasn't praise, Evelyn's visit wasn't as confrontational as our previous encounters. Alex wrapped his arm around me. "She's trying, in her own way." I smiled weakly. Let's hope. The days flew by, and soon it was time to move the paintings to the gallery. With each piece I packed, I felt a combination of excitement and anxiety. "This is it," I whispered to Alex as we loaded the last painting into the van. He squeezed my hand. "You're ready, and I can't wait for the world to see your brilliance." The day before the exhibition was a blur of activity. The gallery was bustling with staff setting up lighting, positioning paintings, and ensuring everything was perfect. Alex and I arrived early, watching in awe as my artwork was given prime positioning. Rebecca approached us, clipboard in hand. "Amelia, it's all coming together wonderfully. Your pieces are truly the highlight." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "Thank you, Rebecca. This means the world to me." She nodded, making a few notes. "The press will be here tomorrow. This is a significant opportunity for you." As the day wore on, I took a moment to sit, absorbing the surroundings. The realization hit me. I was about to have my first major art exhibition. This was a dream come true, and I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Alex came over, handing me a coffee. Deep in thought? I looked up, smiling. Just taking it all in. It's a lot. He sat down next to me. You deserve every bit of this, Amelia. I'm so proud of you. I leaned into him, grateful for his unwavering support. Thank you, Alex. Our moment was interrupted by a call. My phone lit up with an unknown number. Curious, I answered. Amelia? A voice crackled. Yes, who's this? There was a pause, then a familiar voice sneered. It's Evelyn. I stiffened. What do you want? She chuckled. Just wanted to wish you luck for tomorrow. Despite her words, there was an unmistakable tone of mockery. Thanks, I replied curtly, ready to end the call. But Evelyn continued. Actually, there's more. I visited your apartment today. My heart sank. What did you do, Evelyn? She laughed. Let's just say I improved a few of your pieces. I felt the blood drain from my face. You did what? Evelyn's voice was dripping with malice. You'll see soon enough. She hung up before I could say anything else. Panicking, I turned to Alex. She's been to our apartment. She's done something to my paintings. His face darkened. Let's go home. Now. We raced back, anxiety mounting with each passing minute. As we entered our apartment, the devastation was clear. Several of my paintings were destroyed. Splashes of paint, torn canvases, and scribbles marred my artwork. I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. How could she? Alex knelt beside me, equally shocked. We'll get through this, Amelia. But amidst the destruction, a realization dawned on me. The best pieces, the ones meant for the exhibition, were already at the gallery. Evelyn had ruined some paintings, yes, but not the ones for the exhibition. A plan formed in my mind. Wiping away my tears, I looked up at Alex. She thinks she's won, but she hasn't. We have an exhibition tomorrow, and it will be a success. He nodded, determination in his eyes. You're right. Let's focus on that. The day of the exhibition had arrived. I was nervous, but the events of the previous day had given me a newfound determination. Alex looked at me, offering a comforting smile. You ready for this? I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. The gallery was soon teeming with visitors. Reporters, art enthusiasts, and curious onlookers walked around, admiring the pieces. The positive murmurs and awed expressions of the crowd boosted my confidence. Rebecca approached, her face glowing with excitement. Amelia, this is beyond expectation. The response is phenomenal. I grinned. Thank you, Rebecca. It's all thanks to your support. As the day progressed, I was pleasantly surprised to see many familiar faces. Friends, family, and even a few old colleagues came by to show their support. Midway through the exhibition, an elegantly dressed man approached me. Amelia, I'm Charles. I've heard so much about your work, and I must say, it's even better in person. I blushed. Thank you, Charles. He looked around, his gaze settling on a particularly vibrant piece. This one, I'd like to purchase it. I was taken aback. Really? Charles nodded. Absolutely, and not just this one. I'd like to buy a few more. I was elated, hardly believing my luck. Alex joined us, equally thrilled. This is incredible, Amelia. As we finalized the details with Charles, there was a commotion at the entrance. Evelyn had arrived, smugness evident on her face. She walked over, her eyes scanning the gallery. So, this is your big day? I met her gaze evenly. Yes, Evelyn, and it's going better than I could have hoped. She smirked. I see. Well, enjoy it while it lasts. Just as I was about to reply, Charles interjected. You must be the infamous Evelyn. I've heard a lot about you. Evelyn looked him up and down. And who might you be? Charles extended his hand. Charles Montgomery. I've just purchased some of Amelia's artwork. Evelyn's smugness faded, replaced by surprise. You bought these? Charles nodded. Yes, and I must say, they're some of the best pieces I've seen in a long time. Evelyn was at a loss for words. The realization that someone of Charles's stature admired my work was a hard pill to swallow. I decided it was time to turn the tables. Evelyn, remember those paintings you improved at our apartment? She raised an eyebrow. What about them? I smiled. Charles bought those too. Charles added, and I intend to press charges for the damage to my property. Evelyn paled, her confidence shattered. You can't be serious. Charles looked at her sternly. I am. I value art, and what you did was criminal. Evelyn looked like she was about to crumble. I didn't know. I stepped forward. Now you do. Maybe you'll think twice before meddling in others' lives. After the whirlwind of Evelyn's confrontation, the gallery buzzed even more. I had to take a moment to breathe and center myself. The sheer number of people attending and the success of the sales was mind-boggling. Alex came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. How are you holding up? I leaned into his embrace. Better than I thought. But God, Alex, the sheer number of people. He chuckled. They're here for you. All for you. Rebecca sidled up next to us, a glass of champagne in hand. You two are the stars tonight. And Amelia, the critics are raving. Taking a sip of her drink, she continued. I've had 3 other gallery owners approach me already, asking about you. The next big thing, they said. I blinked in surprise, struggling to process the information. Really? She nodded, her eyes twinkling. Really, prepare yourself for a lot more attention after tonight. A familiar voice called out, There's the artist of the evening! I turned to see my old college friend, Lisa, striding over with a big smile on her face. Pulling me into a hug, she said, I always knew you'd make it big, Amy. I laughed. It's still Amelia to you, but thank you, Lisa. It's been too long. As the night wore on, I chatted with countless visitors, some who knew about art, some who didn't, and some who just came to show their support. Each interaction was a reminder of the journey I had taken to get here. Around midnight, the crowd began to thin. The gallery's lights dimmed slightly, casting a warm, ambient glow over the remaining guests. That's when I noticed a familiar face standing by one of my paintings, studying it intently. Uncle Richard? I approached hesitantly. We hadn't spoken in years. He turned to me, his eyes slightly moist. Hello, Amelia. It's been a while. Not knowing what to say, I simply replied, Yes, it has. He looked back at the painting, a piece I had done of our old family home. This takes me back, he murmured. We talked for a long time, reminiscing about old times and catching up on new ones. The rift that had formed in our family after a dispute over inheritance had kept us apart. But that night, in front of my artwork, barriers were broken. By the time the gallery closed, my feet were sore and my voice was hoarse. But the joy in my heart was unparalleled. Alex, ever the doting husband, carried some of my stuff as we headed out. As we drove home, he glanced over at me. You did it, Amelia. You proved them all wrong. I leaned my head against the window, the city lights streaming past. It's just the beginning, Alex. Just the beginning. The sun filtered through the curtains as I sipped my morning coffee. Last night's exhibition success still buzzed in my mind, and the feeling of satisfaction lingered. Alex was reading the morning paper when the phone rang. Picking up, I was met with a familiar, shaky voice. Amelia, it's Evelyn. My guard went up immediately. What do you want? To apologize, she began, desperation evident in her voice. I've seen the error of my ways, especially after the success of your exhibition. Why now, after everything? I asked, my voice icy. The buyer of the paintings has filed a lawsuit. It's substantial. I was hoping if maybe you could talk to him, persuade him to drop the charges. She was almost pleading. I took a deep breath. You expect me to bail you out after everything you've done? I'm genuinely sorry, she insisted. That might be, but actions have consequences, Evelyn, I responded coldly. Please, Amelia, think about it, she urged, before I ended the call. Days later, the court's decision came through. Evelyn was ordered to pay the full cost of the spoiled paintings and a hefty fine for property damage. The verdict didn't surprise me. She had openly admitted to the act, after all. Word reached me that Evelyn had tried to appeal for leniency, but to no avail. The damage was done. Soon after, Evelyn ceased all communications with me. The silence was, in many ways, a relief. With her out of the picture, my life regained its balance. My career flourished, and Alex and I continued to strengthen our bond. The ordeal with Evelyn was a harsh reminder that life was filled with challenges, but also that every cloud had a silver lining. Sometimes, justice did prevail. I'm Lila. My life was straightforward, just work and home. I worked as a web designer, and my days were filled with coding, designing, and client meetings, all from the comfort of my home. I was good at what I did, and it showed in my bank balance. It wasn't always like this. A year ago, my life was a mess after a horrible breakup. I had sworn off relationships, focusing only on work. But then, I met Ethan at a friend's party. Ethan came up to me with a simple, "Hi, I'm Ethan. You're Lila, right?" His voice was calm and steady, no airs, no pretense. "Yes, that's me," I replied, taking in his casual attire and easygoing smile. We talked about everything that evening, from movies to our hobbies. He mentioned he worked in sales and seemed to enjoy his job. "You must love what you do," he commented after I explained my work. "I do," I smiled. "It's more than just a job for me." He nodded, and we continued chatting for what felt like hours. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged numbers. It wasn't long before our casual chats turned into dates, and our dates turned into serious discussions about our future together. Ethan was different from the men I'd known. He was kind, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my life. I remember our third date distinctly. We were sitting in a small cafe, and he handed me a bouquet of flowers. "For you," he said simply. "Oh, Ethan, they're lovely," I replied, taken aback by the gesture. "I thought they'd make you smile," he grinned. We dated for a few months, and everything felt perfect. So when Ethan proposed, I didn't hesitate. We had a simple wedding and moved in together. My house, spacious and filled with the memories of my single life, now echoed with our shared laughter. However, things took a turn when Ethan came home one day looking distressed. "I lost my job, Lila," he began, avoiding my gaze. I was stunned, but tried to be understanding. "It's okay, Ethan. We'll manage. You'll find another job soon." He looked relieved. "Thank you for understanding. I promise I'll make this right." I believed him. Truly I did. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, with Ethan not working and his job interviews leading nowhere, my patience began to wear thin. As the days went by, my trust in Ethan waned, replaced by an unsettling anxiety. Our financial situation was still stable thanks to my job, but Ethan's attitude towards employment became increasingly lackadaisical. One evening, I overheard him talking on the phone. "Yes, Mom, I'm taking care of everything. Lila's just doing her little web designing thing, but I'm handling the big stuff." That conversation irked me. Was he implying that he was the primary earner? A week later, his sister Elsie dropped by for a visit. She and I never really got along. Our beliefs and lifestyles were polar opposites. She had chosen a life completely centered around her home and husband, a choice I respected but couldn't understand. The moment she walked in, she started inspecting the place. "Lila, don't you ever dust around here?" she commented, running her finger along a shelf. "We've both been busy, Elsie," I said, trying to remain calm. She smirked. "Well, maybe if you focused less on work and more on your home." "Elsie, Lila's doing a lot, okay? You don't need to come here and criticize." Ethan quickly interjected, trying to mediate. Elsie raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I know you're taking care of everything, Ethan. I just feel bad you married someone who can't even keep a house tidy." I was fuming. "Elsie, it's not just my job to keep the house clean. Ethan lives here too." Ethan glanced at me, then at his sister, a silent plea in his eyes. "Let's not discuss this here," he said softly. Elsie smirked. Of course, wouldn't want to make things uncomfortable. But remember, Ethan, a man's role is to provide. I was left seething as Elsie sauntered out, leaving a trail of tension in her wake. Later that evening, I tried talking to Ethan. "Why does Elsie think you're the main provider? Why is she under the impression that I'm just sitting around doing nothing?" Ethan looked uncomfortable. "Look, Lila, I might have mentioned to her that I'm handling a lot of things. I didn't want her or Mom thinking less of me because I'm not working. That doesn't give you the right to belittle my contribution, Ethan. We're supposed to be a team, I replied, frustration evident in my voice. Ethan sighed. I'm sorry, Lila. I'll clear things up with Elsie and Mom. Please give me some time. The days that followed were full of tension. Every morning, as I settled into my home office, the same nagging thought kept bothering me. Was Ethan being truthful? How much more was he keeping from me? It was one evening, as I sat down to pay some bills, that I noticed something off. A hefty amount had been transferred monthly from our joint account to an unfamiliar one. Curiosity piqued, I decided to dig deeper. I approached Ethan as he lounged on the couch. Hey, I noticed some transfers from our account. Do you know anything about it? Ethan looked up, startled. Oh, yeah. That's just some money I've been sending to Mom to help her out. I raised an eyebrow. Help her out? With what? And why didn't you tell me? He hesitated. Well, she has some expenses, and since I'm not working, I thought I'd support her with our savings. I was taken aback. Ethan, that's our money. We should be discussing these things together. It's a considerable amount. Ethan looked away. I didn't think it was a big deal, Lila. She's family. Frustration bubbled up. But so am I. Why didn't you talk to me about this? I didn't want you to worry, he muttered. My voice began to tremble with anger. Ethan, keeping secrets, especially about money, isn't right. We made a commitment to each other. This isn't how it's supposed to work. He sighed. I know, Lila, I didn't want to feel useless. I wanted to at least do something for my family since I can't for ours right now. I looked at him, tears in my eyes. But you are doing something. You're sharing your life with me. We need trust and transparency. Without that, what do we have? Ethan lowered his gaze. I'm sorry, Lila. I messed up. I took a deep breath. We need to fix this, Ethan, starting with being honest about everything. He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I promise, no more secrets. But as the night wore on and I lay in bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling of betrayal. In the wake of our last conversation, things felt even more strained between Ethan and me. Though he promised transparency, my own curiosity led me on a path to uncover the depth of his deception. One evening, as Ethan went out under the guise of another job seminar, I decided to do a little detective work. Going through our financial statements, I traced back every transaction to his mother's account. The sums were large, far more than one would need for general assistance. I picked up my phone and called my friend Jane, who worked at a bank. Hey Jane, I need a favor, I began, hesitating. Can you help me look into an account? I think something's off. There was a pause on the other line before Jane replied, Lila, you know that's not exactly legal. I know, but I'm desperate, I admitted. I promise, I won't get you in trouble. After hearing my story, Jane hesitated for a moment and then said, Okay, send me the account number. I'll see what I can do. A day later, she called me back with information that confirmed my suspicions. Lila, Jane began, her voice low, the money Ethan's sending to his mother? It's not just sitting there. It's being funneled into an investment account, and the amounts are substantial. My heart sank. Investment account? Yes, and the worst part is, it's under both his mother's and his name. I was speechless. Not only was he giving away our savings, but he was also making investments without informing me. Jane, thank you, I managed, my voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Lila, she replied. I sat in our living room, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. How could he? When Ethan returned later that evening, I confronted him, papers scattered all over our coffee table. Ethan, we need to talk. He took one look at the bank statements and paled. Lila? Why, Ethan, why did you lie to me? I demanded. Ethan swallowed hard. Mom convinced me it was a good investment. She said we'd double our money in no time. I thought I was doing it for us. But it's our money, Ethan, I exclaimed. You can't make decisions like this on your own. We're supposed to be partners. He sat down, defeated. I know. I messed up. I thought I could surprise you, show you I was contributing. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. By lying? By betraying my trust? Ethan looked away, guilt evident in his eyes. I'm sorry, Lila. I should have talked to you. The truth was out, but the damage was done. Could our relationship withstand the strain of so many lies? The atmosphere in the house was as cold and quiet as a winter morning. After uncovering Ethan's deceit, I was determined to keep my composure, but I found myself rattled whenever I remembered the mistruths. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed to be avoiding the topic entirely. Just as I sat down at my computer, the front door burst open. Before I could react, Lydia, Ethan's mother, and Elsie stormed into the living room. You shameless woman! Lydia's voice cut through the air. All you do is sit on your behind and suck the life out of my son. Elsie chimed in with a smirk. Always knew you were a leech, just waiting to latch on to someone better off. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before replying. I'm the one working and earning here. Ethan hasn't been for months. Ethan stood off to the side, his eyes darting between us. I hoped, expected that he would say something, defend me. But he remained silent. Lydia, her face red with rage, took a step forward. You expect us to believe that? My son has been the one supporting this family. You've just been enjoying his hard work. Elsie nodded in agreement. Honestly, I don't know what he saw in you. You're just a lazy housewife, living off someone else's money. Their words were like salt on an open wound. But more painful than their false accusations was Ethan's silence. He just stood there, watching the scene unfold without uttering a word in my defense. Taking a deep breath, I stood tall and looked straight into Lydia's eyes. All I ask is for the money Ethan transferred to you, returned. It's rightfully ours, not just his. Lydia's face twisted in rage. How dare you? That's my son's money, and I'll decide what to do with it. Despite the fury in her eyes, I didn't waver. It's our money, Lydia. Earned by me, not him. She stared at me for a moment, the room silent except for our heavy breathing. Then, with a huff, she turned on her heel, Elsie following close behind. This isn't over, Lydia spat as she stormed out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, leaving a lingering echo. I turned to Ethan, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he just looked down, avoiding my gaze. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on me. Not only was there deceit about money, but I was also fighting a battle with his family on my own. His silence hurt more than any deceit ever could. A few days after the confrontation, I sat in my home office, distracted by everything that had occurred. The tranquility of my workspace, usually a haven for creativity, now felt stifling. Taking a sip from my coffee, I pondered on how to reclaim my dignity and pride. The first step was clear. I accessed my online bank, scrutinizing every transaction, noting down each suspicious transfer. The amount Ethan had funneled to his mother was staggering. Money I had earned with sweat and sleepless nights, taken without my knowledge. A message pinged on my computer. It was from Lucy, a friend since college, and also a brilliant lawyer. I had confided in her about the whole situation, and she was eager to help. Hey, I've looked into your situation. Let's meet for lunch? Her message read. We met at a quiet bistro, away from prying eyes. So, Lucy began, stirring her iced tea. I've been doing some digging, and I think we have a solid case here. It's about time we put Ethan and his family in their place. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I just want what's rightfully mine, Lucy. I can't let them get away with this. Lucy's eyes gleamed with determination. Trust me, they won't. Weeks turned into a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings, and strategy sessions. Lucy and I, along with a team she'd put together, found evidence not only of Ethan's deceit, but also questionable transactions involving Lydia's accounts. It was a spiderweb of lies and deceit, with Ethan and Lydia at its center. One evening, after another exhaustive session, Lucy looked at me and said, It's time. Let's serve them the papers. The next morning, Lucy and I drove to Lydia's place. Ethan's car was parked outside. Perfect. We rang the bell, and Elsie answered, her face a mask of fake surprise. Oh, it's you, she sneered. We're not here for games. I said coldly. Is Ethan here? Before Elsie could reply, Ethan emerged from the living room. His confident smirk vanished as Lucy handed him an envelope. You're being sued, she said crisply. For fraud and theft. I'd advise you to get a lawyer. His face paled. This is ridiculous, he exclaimed. No, what's ridiculous is you stealing from your wife and lying about it, I retorted. Lydia appeared at the door, her eyes scanning the scene. What's going on here? You might want to read this too, Lucy said, handing her another envelope. As Lydia read the documents, her face went from smug to horrified. You can't do this. I stood tall, all the pain and humiliation fueling my resolve. I can, and I am. See you in court. Walking away from that house, with Lucy by my side, I felt a weight lifted. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about standing up for myself when others tried to push me down. It was about reclaiming my power. And it was served cold. As the days drew closer to our court date, I braced myself for the inevitable backlash. I knew Lydia and Ethan wouldn't go down without a fight. And while I was emotionally ready, I didn't expect them to bring the battle right to my doorstep. It was a chilly evening when my doorbell rang. Peering through the peephole, I saw them, Lydia, Elsie, and Ethan, their faces a cocktail of anger and determination. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Thought you'd ambush us with that lawsuit, did you? Lydia spat out, taking a step inside. Ethan and Elsie trailed behind her, blocking the exit. Calm down, Lydia. This isn't a good look for you, I replied evenly. You think you can just humiliate us in public? Drag our name through the mud? Elsie snapped, her voice dripping with contempt. It's simple, I replied coolly. Return the money, and this ends. Ethan, who had been silent till now, looked at me with a mix of frustration and sadness. Is this how you want things to end? By suing your own family? Family? I echoed, my voice icy. A family doesn't steal from each other. A family doesn't lie and degrade one another. He sighed. I made a mistake, but taking us to court? That's extreme. It's justice, I responded, and I'm not dropping the case. Lydia, crimson with rage, glared at me. We won't let you tarnish our reputation. You're going to regret this. Is that a threat? I countered. Everything I've done is legal. Can you say the same? Enough! Ethan shouted. This is getting us nowhere. I fixed him with a steely gaze. You're right. It's clear where we all stand. Now, I suggest you leave. Elsie sneered. You may have gotten the upper hand now, but remember, the courts haven't decided anything yet. We'll see, I replied confidently. As they left, the tension in the room was palpable, but I stood my ground. They had come to intimidate, to make me doubt my course. But it had the opposite effect. Their visit only solidified my decision. There was no turning back now, and whatever the outcome, I was ready. The day of the court hearing arrived quicker than I anticipated. As I entered the building, my heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, echoing the resolute beat of my heart. There was a thrum of anticipation in the air, and I could feel eyes on me, but I remained focused, my gaze unwavering. Sitting across the room, Lydia, Elsie, and Ethan whispered among themselves, casting furtive glances in my direction. Ethan looked especially worn out, his earlier confidence replaced by clear anxiety. Lydia, on the other hand, wore a mask of defiance, while Elsie's face was set in a frown, her eyes hard and calculating. The room fell silent as the judge entered, taking her place at the bench. We are gathered here today to discuss the matter of financial fraud and theft, she began. Present your case. My lawyer stepped forward, presenting the evidence of the unauthorized transfers and Ethan's deception. The paper trail was undeniable, every detail meticulously recorded. The judge frequently glanced up from the documents, looking first at Ethan and then at me. Ethan's lawyer made a valiant attempt to argue that the money was gifted willingly, but the evidence against them was insurmountable. When Lydia was called to the stand, her arrogance was palpable. That money was for my son, she declared. It was only right that he should have it. But it wasn't yours to take, I replied calmly when it was my turn to speak. And it wasn't yours to keep, Lydia snapped, pointing a shaking finger at me. The judge interjected, "This isn't about family dynamics. This is about the law, and the law is clear on this matter." Hours seemed to stretch on as the proceedings continued. When the final verdict was read, vindication surged through me. Ethan was ordered to return every cent he had taken, and additional punitive damages were awarded to me for the deceit and emotional trauma. After the hearing, as I stepped out into the crisp air, I felt lighter than I had in months. This was more than just a legal victory. It was my emancipation from the shackles of deception, disrespect, and manipulation. Ethan approached, his face pale. "I'm sorry," he murmured, not meeting my eyes. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment I saw the man I had fallen in love with. But that image was quickly replaced by the reality of who he had become. "It's too late for sorry," I replied. As I walked away, I felt a sense of finality. It was the end of a painful chapter in my life, but it was also the beginning of a new one where I was in control, where I was free. That evening, as I sat in my home, the silence was soothing. There were no more whispers, no more deceit, no more games. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace. And as the sun set, casting a warm golden hue across the room, I knew that tomorrow would be a new day, full of promise and endless possibilities.
Let me introduce you to the main characters in this story. I'm Joanna, and I often found myself consumed by my job. My husband's name is Mark. He's a patient and understanding man. Together, we have a lovely daughter named Lily, a curious bundle of joy who is growing up faster than we could keep up with. And then there's Evelyn, Mark's mother. She's been a part of my life since I married her son, but I can't say we were very close. You see, I was always busy with work, trying to make ends meet and provide for my family. That left me with very little time for visits, especially to Mark's childhood home. Evelyn, on the other hand, wasn't much of an outgoing person. She preferred the comfort of her home over going out, and Mark always said it was because she was often ill. One evening, as I was rushing through another hectic day, I had an epiphany. Lily was growing up fast, and I felt she should get to know her grandmother better. It wasn't fair that she hardly knew Evelyn, and I needed to make amends for my long absence. I mentioned my idea to Mark, who smiled warmly and agreed that it was long overdue. "She's your family too, after all," he said, always the voice of reason. So, despite my never-ending to-do list, we decided to pay Evelyn a visit. It had been a while, and I wanted to make up for lost time. As we drove to her house, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. I had spent so little time with her, and I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. When we arrived at her house, it was clear that it hadn't seen a dust rag in ages. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and a thick layer of dust covered everything. It was a mess, to say the least. Lily, always candid, wrinkled her nose in disgust and asked, "Mommy, why is Grandma's house so dirty?" I exchanged a glance with Mark, who chuckled softly. "Well, we're here to fix that, aren't we?" Lily nodded, and we rolled up our sleeves, grabbed some cleaning supplies, and got to work. We scrubbed and dusted, swept, and mopped, while Evelyn watched with a mix of surprise and gratitude. She hadn't expected us to clean her house, and that made our efforts all the more meaningful. As the sun began to set, we decided to call it a day. We'd done a good job, and I was proud of what we'd achieved. It felt like the right step towards bridging the gap between Evelyn and me. Little did I know that this visit would be the start of something unexpected, something that would change everything for our family. After our first visit to Evelyn's place, things began to change. I could see that Lily and Evelyn were warming up to each other, and that made me happy. It was a small step in the right direction. A few weeks later, I decided to take another day off from work to spend time with my family and help Evelyn around the house. It was a weekend, and I wanted to make our visits a regular thing. So I packed up some cleaning supplies, and Lily and I headed over to Evelyn's place again. This time, as we walked through the front door, I could see the surprise on Evelyn's face. She hadn't expected us to return so soon. "We're here to help, Evelyn," I said with a warm smile. Lily chimed in, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Yeah, Grandma, we're going to make your house all pretty." Evelyn hesitated for a moment before nodding gratefully. "Thank you, both of you. I appreciate it more than you know." We got to work just like last time, dusting, cleaning, and tidying up. As we worked, Evelyn joined in, and we started talking more than we ever had. It felt good to chat and share stories while we worked. Lily, always full of questions, asked Evelyn about her favorite things. "What's your favorite color, Grandma?" she asked with genuine curiosity. Evelyn smiled. "I've always loved the color blue. It reminds me of the sea, and I find it very calming." Lily nodded, taking in this newfound information. "Blue is nice. I like it too." As the hours passed, we tackled one room after another. I could see Evelyn becoming more comfortable around us. She started reminiscing about Mark's childhood, sharing stories that made us laugh. It was like discovering a whole new side of her. By the time we finished, the house looked entirely different. It was cleaner and brighter, and Evelyn looked at it with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She said, "I can't remember the last time my house looked this good. Thank you, Joanna, and thank you, Lily." Lily beamed, and I felt a warmth in my heart. Our efforts were paying off, and it seemed like Evelyn was genuinely enjoying our company. I knew we were on the right path, slowly but surely building a stronger bond between us. Little did I know that this simple act of helping out would lead to a series of events that would shake our family to its core. A few more weeks went by, and our visits to Evelyn's house became a regular thing. It was nice seeing her more often, and Lily seemed to adore her grandmother more with each visit. We'd spend our weekends cleaning, chatting, and sometimes even cooking together. One evening, after a particularly productive day of cleaning, we decided to head home as the sun dipped below the horizon. Lily and I climbed into the car, and I started the engine. I felt a sense of contentment, knowing that our family was slowly coming closer together. As we drove down the quiet, winding road, I couldn't help but think about how our relationship with Evelyn was improving. It was then that something unexpected happened. The car started to act strangely, swerving and jerking. Panic welled up inside me as I struggled to regain control. Lily cried out from the back seat, her tiny voice trembling. "Mommy, what's happening?" I gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hold on, Lily," I said, my voice shaky but determined. I fought to keep the car on the road as it veered dangerously close to a tree. It felt like a lifetime in those few moments. Miraculously, we managed to avoid the tree and come to a stop by the side of the road. My hands were trembling as I turned off the engine and took a deep breath. Lily and I were both shaken, but we were unharmed. I hugged her tightly, thankful that we had escaped without a scratch. After ensuring Lily was okay, I got out of the car to inspect the damage. It didn't take long to see what had gone wrong. All 4 of our tires had been slashed. My heart sank as I realized that someone had deliberately done this to us. Lily asked with a quiver in her voice, "Mommy, what happened to the car?" I crouched down to her level, trying to put on a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, sweetie. It looks like someone did something to our tires, but we're safe." I knew I needed to call for help, but I was also beginning to feel a creeping sense of unease. Who would do such a thing? Why would someone want to hurt us? As I reached for my phone to dial for assistance, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a random act of vandalism. It felt personal, and I couldn't help but wonder if our newfound connection with Evelyn had something to do with it. As I stood by the side of the road, staring at our slashed tires, a growing unease settled in my stomach. It just didn't make sense. Who would want to harm us, especially when we were on our way back from helping Evelyn? The thought of someone targeting my daughter and me was chilling. Lily, sensing my distress, asked, "Mommy, why would someone do this to our car?" I crouched down again, trying to find the right words. "I don't know, sweetheart. It's a mean thing for someone to do, but don't worry, we'll get through this." I dialed the roadside assistance number, and they promised to send help soon. While waiting, I examined the tires more closely. It was evident that they had been deliberately slashed with a sharp object. This wasn't just a random act of mischief. Someone had meant to hurt us. The minutes ticked by slowly, and my thoughts kept circling back to the same question. Who could be behind this? I couldn't come up with a plausible answer. Evelyn had been kind during our recent visits, and there was no reason for her to want to harm us. When the tow truck finally arrived, the driver assessed the damage and confirmed that the tires had been intentionally slashed. He changed them for us, and as we continued our journey home, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Once we arrived home, I decided to take a closer look at the surveillance cameras that were installed around Evelyn's house. Maybe they had captured something that could provide a clue. Lily watched curiously as I reviewed the footage on my laptop. As we scrolled through the recordings, my heart skipped a beat. There it was. The shocking moment when someone had approached our car and slashed the tires. My hands trembled as I replayed the video, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Lily pointed at the screen, her voice trembling. "Mommy, who's that?" I swallowed hard as I recognized the figure in the video. It was Evelyn. She had slashed our tires while we were inside her house. My mind reeled in disbelief. Why would she do such a thing? I closed the laptop, my thoughts in turmoil. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Lily looked up at me, her innocent eyes filled with confusion and fear. I knew I had to confront Evelyn about what we had discovered, but I couldn't predict what would happen next. The revelation from the surveillance footage had left me in a state of shock. Why would Evelyn, Mark's own mother, slash our car tires? I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I decided to wait until Mark got home to discuss this with him. As I nervously paced the living room, Lily played with her toys, unaware of the turmoil in her mother's mind. When Mark finally arrived, I wasted no time in telling him everything I had discovered. "Mark," I began, my voice trembling, "you won't believe what I found on the surveillance footage. It was your mother who slashed our car tires when we were at her house." Mark's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? That can't be right. My mother wouldn't do something like that." I handed him my laptop and played the footage. As he watched the video, his face grew paler, and he seemed torn between denial and acceptance. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve, her voice filled with worry. "Daddy, why did Grandma do that?" Mark struggled to find the right words as he looked down at our daughter. I don't know, Lily. We need to talk to Grandma and find out." As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a surge of anger and fear. I needed to know the truth and protect my family. "We can't just ignore this, Mark. Someone wanted to hurt us. We have to go to the police." But Mark hesitated, his voice filled with uncertainty. "I think we should talk to Mom first. Try to understand why she did this." I was torn between wanting answers and fearing the consequences of involving the police. All right, I conceded reluctantly, but we need to do it soon. That night, Mark and I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The knowledge of Evelyn's actions weighed heavily on both of us. I wondered if there was something more to this than met the eye. Mark's silence spoke volumes, and I couldn't help but feel that he was keeping something from me. Finally, he confessed, "Joanna, there's something you need to know. My mother, she's been struggling with a mental illness, schizophrenia." I gasped, my heart sinking. Schizophrenia? Why didn't you tell me before? Mark's eyes filled with regret. I didn't think it would ever become a problem like this. She's usually stable, but sometimes she has episodes. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My mother-in-law, schizophrenic? It explained her erratic behavior, but it also left me wondering about the extent of her condition and whether it posed a danger to us. As we lay there in the dark, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The web of secrets and uncertainty surrounding our family was getting more tangled by the minute. Mark's revelation about his mother's schizophrenia had left me with a whirlwind of emotions. It explained the inexplicable slashing of our car tires, but it also opened a Pandora's box of questions. I knew we needed answers, and we needed them urgently. The next day, after dropping Lily off at school, Mark and I decided to confront Evelyn. We needed to understand the full extent of her condition and her motives behind the act that had endangered our lives. We arrived at Evelyn's house, and Mark knocked on the door. She answered, and her face brightened when she saw us. "Mark, Joanna, what brings you here today?" she asked warmly. Mark took a deep breath, his voice hesitant. "Mom, we need to talk. It's important." Evelyn's smile faded as she sensed the gravity of the situation. We sat down in the living room, and Mark began, "Mom, Joanna found out about the car tires. She saw it on the surveillance cameras." Evelyn's face grew tense, and she avoided eye contact. I don't know what you're talking about." I couldn't contain my frustration anymore. "Evelyn, we have the footage. It was you who did it. Why would you do that?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled. "I didn't want you to leave. I missed you both so much, and I thought if I did something to your car, you would have to stay a little longer." I felt a mix of sympathy and exasperation. It was clear that her actions were driven by her illness, but it didn't make them any less frightening. Mark put his arm around her, trying to comfort her as he said, "Mom, we understand that you missed us, but this wasn't the way to handle it." Evelyn nodded, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I know. I just didn't want to be alone." Mark and I exchanged worried glances. We knew Evelyn needed help beyond what we could provide. Mark gently asked, "Mom, have you been taking your medication regularly?" Evelyn hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Not as often as I should." Mark sighed, his concern deepening. "We're going to get you the help you need, Mom. We'll take you to see a doctor and get your medication sorted out." Evelyn nodded, tears still in her eyes. "Thank you, both of you. I'm so sorry for what I've done." As we left Evelyn's house that day, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that we were finally on the path to getting her the help she needed. But the journey was far from over. Our family had faced some dark and unexpected twists, and we were determined to support Evelyn as she battled her illness. Our family's journey took an unexpected turn with Mark's revelation about his mother's schizophrenia. It left me with a whirlwind of emotions, understanding, compassion, and a sense of responsibility. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Mark and I decided it was time to have a crucial conversation with Evelyn. We needed to discuss her treatment plan and address the incident with the slashed car tires. The atmosphere was tense as we sat down in her living room. Mark began carefully. "Mom, we've been discussing your treatment with a psychiatrist, and we're committed to helping you get better. But there's something else we need to talk about." Evelyn, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension, nodded and said, "I'm listening." I took a deep breath and said, "Evelyn, we reviewed the surveillance footage from the day our car tires were slashed. It showed that it was you who did it." Evelyn's face paled, and she looked down, unable to meet our eyes. After a moment of silence, she admitted, "Yes, it was me." My heart sank at her confession, and I couldn't help but ask, "But why, Evelyn? We thought you missed us?" Evelyn hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes. "I did miss you both terribly, but there's something I need to confess." Mark and I exchanged concerned glances. We had no idea what else might be lurking beneath the surface of this already complex situation. Evelyn took a deep breath, her voice shaking. "I didn't just slash the tires to make you stay longer. I did it because I was terrified of what I might do." Confusion and worry washed over me, and I asked, "Terrified of what, Evelyn?" Evelyn's voice quivered as she revealed, "There are times when my illness takes over. I hear voices, see things that aren't there. I was afraid that if you left, I might lose control and harm someone, maybe even you or Lily." My heart ached for Evelyn. She had been silently battling these inner demons, struggling with a reality that was beyond our understanding. Mark reached out, taking her hand gently, and said, "Mom, we had no idea. We're here for you, and we'll support you through this. We'll make sure you get the help you need." Evelyn nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, both of you. I'm so sorry for everything." As we sat there, I realized the depth of the pain and fear Evelyn had been living with. It was a shocking revelation that explained so much, and it made me even more determined to help her on her journey to recovery. Our family had faced adversity, but we were stronger together and ready to face whatever lay ahead. Our family's journey had taken unexpected turns, and the revelation about Evelyn's schizophrenia had opened doors to a deeper understanding of her struggles. Our commitment to her well-being became our top priority. As weeks turned into months, our visits to Evelyn's house became more frequent. We ensured she took her medication, attended therapy sessions, and provided emotional support. Our family dynamic had transformed, and Evelyn was no longer just my mother-in-law. She was family, and her battle was our battle. One evening, as we gathered in her living room, reminiscing and sipping tea, my eyes fell upon an old, weathered box tucked away on a bookshelf. It was filled with faded photographs, letters, and postcards from Mark's younger days. Lily, always curious, joined me in exploring this treasure trove of memories. "Mommy, who are these people?" Lily asked, pointing at the photographs. I smiled. "These are your daddy's family, sweetie. These photos are from a long time ago." Evelyn watched us with a hint of nostalgia in her eyes. It was evident that this box held a significant place in her heart. As we continued to sift through the box, I discovered an old diary that belonged to Evelyn. It was worn and filled with handwritten pages. I opened it, and as I began to read, I realized that it held the key to a long-buried family secret. Evelyn noticed my expression and gently said, "Joanna, that diary holds the story of our family, a story that I've kept hidden for years." I looked at her, my curiosity piqued. "What kind of story, Evelyn?" She took a deep breath and began to recount the tale from her diary. It was a story of pain, loss, and a family torn apart by a dark secret. a secret that had haunted her for years, a secret that explained why she had been so determined to keep us close. As Evelyn spoke, her voice trembling with emotion, Mark and I listened intently, our hearts heavy with the weight of the revelation. The family secret unveiled before us was a reminder that our pasts are often more complicated than we can imagine, and that understanding and compassion were essential as we moved forward together. In that moment, as we confronted the truths of our family's history, I knew that our bonds had grown stronger. We were prepared to face the future as a united family, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Our journey had been filled with surprises and revelations, but it had ultimately led us to a deeper connection and a newfound appreciation for the strength of family ties.
As kids, everyone believed families were safe havens. But growing up, I realized that might not be the case for everyone, especially not for me. Our small suburban house was always filled with laughter and chatter, but not always the good kind. Our living room was a cozy space with mismatched cushions, a worn-out rug, and walls covered with photos, mostly of Clara. Clara with a trophy, Clara on her first day of school, Clara in her dance costume. There were some of me, of course, mostly hidden behind the vase, or partly obscured by another brighter, shinier photo of Clara. One afternoon, as I was rearranging the living room, Mrs. Henderson, our next-door neighbor and my mother's longtime friend, came over. A warm aroma of freshly baked cookies filled the air, her standard visiting treat. "Margaret," she greeted, enveloping my mother in a hug. "How are the girls?" Before my mother could reply, I stepped forward, offering a tray of lemonade. "Hello, Mrs. Henderson?" She looked up, a little surprised, as if noticing me for the first time. "Oh, Evelyn, you've grown!" "Just a little," I responded, attempting a smile. My mother chimed in. "Wait till you see Clara. She's become quite the young lady." On cue, Clara danced into the room, her blonde hair bouncing with every step. "Auntie Jen." She wrapped Mrs. Henderson in a tight hug. Mrs. Henderson chuckled, holding Clara at arm's length. "Look at you! Margaret wasn't kidding. You're blossoming so beautifully." Clara beamed, twirling for effect. The conversation flowed easily after that, Clara narrating her recent school achievements and dance recitals. At some point, I tried to join the conversation, mentioning a recent school project. My mother brushed it off. "That's nice, dear," and immediately redirected the topic back to Clara's accomplishments. I could feel a familiar sinking feeling in my chest, the need to be seen, to be recognized. As the afternoon sun streamed into the room, casting shadows, I overheard my mother's soft voice. Evelyn was just a test case for Clara. Mrs. Henderson frowned. "Margaret, that's a harsh thing to say. They're both your daughters." Clara looked between the two adults, confusion clouding her bright eyes. "I just mean," my mother tried to explain, "that with Clara, everything was easier. She was planned." I felt a lump forming in my throat, the weight of being the unplanned child pressing down on me. Mrs. Henderson, sensing the tension, tried to lighten the mood. "Both your girls are special, Margaret. Don't forget that." Clara piped up, her innocence shining through. "Mommy, does this mean you love me more than Evie?" My mother hesitated, then replied with a gentle squeeze on Clara's hand. "Both of you are loved, just differently." Hearing those words, I retreated to my room. The sting of their implications burrowed deep, forming scars that would last a lifetime. Juggling between university lectures and 2 part-time jobs was not how most people envisioned their college experience. For me, every morning began at dawn, serving customers at the local cafe, filling them up with their morning dose of caffeine. Afternoons were all about classes and group projects, and by evening, I was surrounded by a sea of books at the local bookstore where I worked the second shift. I'd often come home late, exhausted, only to find Clara lounging in the living room, engrossed in one of her new hobbies, her art supplies strewn everywhere. Our family dynamics had always been clear. Clara was the star, and I was the backdrop. One evening, as we all gathered around the dinner table, a rare occurrence with our conflicting schedules, I mustered the courage to discuss a decision I had been contemplating for weeks. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking about renting a place closer to the university," I began hesitantly, eyes darting between my parents and Clara. My statement was met with stunned silence. Then Dad's chuckle broke the quiet. "Renting? On a barista's and a bookstore clerk's wage?" Clara snickered. "Planning on living in a cardboard box, are we?" Ignoring her jibe, I turned to Mom, hoping for some support. "I've saved up, and with careful budgeting, I think I can manage." Mom put down her fork, her expression skeptical. "Evie, you're barely managing to pay us for staying here. Do you think landlords will be as forgiving as we are?" "It's not about what's easy," I responded, my voice quivering slightly. "It's about learning to stand on my own feet." Clara leaned in, smirking. Big words for someone who's been leaning on us all her life. Fed up, I retorted, "Maybe it's time you learned a thing or two about hard work and responsibility, Clara." She rolled her eyes, clearly uninterested in my lecture, while Mom interjected, "Girls, enough. Evie, we just don't want to see you struggle unnecessarily." "I appreciate that, Mom," I replied softly, "but sometimes struggle is necessary for growth." The days that followed were filled with whispered conversations behind closed doors and Clara's occasional jabs. Yet, my resolve remained unwavering. A week later, with bags packed, I moved into a modest, slightly worn-out studio apartment near my university. The independence was both daunting and exhilarating. While the family home, with its comfort and familiarity, was just a few blocks away, the emotional distance felt like miles. It was clear that my decision had not only changed my living situation, but also redefined my relationship with my family. The distant city lights shimmered through the curtains of my apartment, their soft glow contrasting the dark room. Engrossed in a particularly demanding case file, I was carefully making notes when my phone's unexpected ringing snapped me out of my concentration. I saw Clara's name on the screen and felt a pang of unease. Our last interaction had been months ago, and it hadn't been pleasant. Taking a deep breath, I swiped to answer. "Clara?" There was a pause, so unusual for my normally outspoken sister. Then, with an icy detachment, she said, "Dad's gone." For a moment, the words didn't register. "What do you mean, gone?" I stammered. She exhaled loudly. "Heart attack. It was unexpected. The doctors did everything, but—" I could feel a weight pressing on my chest. "I can't believe it. How's Mom?" Clara's tone, cold and almost businesslike, gave away no emotion. Distraught, as you can imagine. She's not speaking, not eating, just sitting there in the living room, staring at his favorite chair. I tried to visualize the scene, our childhood home filled with sorrow. The house which had seen so many memories, so many highs and lows, and now this. "And what about you?" I asked, trying to gauge her emotions. "How are you handling it?" There was a brief moment of vulnerability in her voice. "I'm coping, but this isn't about me." Before I could ask her what she meant, Clara launched into her main agenda. "Listen, I've got commitments, a busy work schedule, and my social life. I can't be there all the time. You need to come home and take care of things. And more importantly, Mom." The audacity of her demand infuriated me. "She's our mother, Clara, not a responsibility to be tossed around because you're too busy with your commitments." Clara hissed back. "You've always loved playing the responsible older sister, haven't you? Here's your chance. I've been there for them while you were busy building your career. Now, it's your turn." Every fiber of my being wanted to lash out at her selfishness, but I paused. Now was not the time for sibling rivalry. "All right," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll come home, but not because you ordered me to. Mom needs support, and I'll be there for her." She responded with a sarcastic cheerfulness. "Perfect. Glad you're seeing sense. Come quickly, won't you?" The line went dead, and I sat there, reeling. The loss of my father and the task ahead weighed heavily on me, but I was determined to step up. For Mom's sake, coming back home was like stepping into a different world. The once warm and lively house now felt cold and empty. Though I'd prepared myself mentally, Nothing could have truly readied me for the stark change. Mom, usually the backbone of our family, looked frail and diminished. Her once sparkling eyes were now dull with grief. She barely acknowledged my arrival, lost in her own world of pain. But Clara, on the other hand, was as vocal as ever. "You finally decided to grace us with your presence," Clara remarked, her voice dripping with sarcasm as I entered the living room. Ignoring her jibe, I approached Mom, gently touching her arm. "Mom, I'm here now. We'll get through this together." She just nodded, her gaze distant. That evening, as I prepared dinner, I could hear Clara and Mom conversing in hushed tones in the adjacent room. Words like selfish, irresponsible, and career reached my ears. While I couldn't make out the entirety of the conversation, the undertones were clear. My absence during the past few years was a prime topic of discussion. At the dinner table, the atmosphere was tense. Every bite, every sip was filled with unspoken grievances. I mustered the courage to break the silence. "Mom, I know I haven't been around as much as I should have, but I'm here now, and I promise to be here for you." Mom, taking a deep breath, replied, "Evelyn, it's not about now. It's about all those years when you chose your work over us. I needed you then, and Clara was the one who was always by my side." Clara, smirking, added, "Some of us chose family over ambition." Stung by the accusations, I retorted, "I worked hard to provide for myself, to ensure I didn't burden you or Dad. And every time I offered help, it was declined. What did you expect me to do?" Clara scoffed, "Oh, please, play the victim somewhere else." The night wore on with heightened emotions and bitter words. The gap between the world I had built and the home I left behind had never felt wider. As I lay in my old bedroom that night, the weight of their expectations and the sting of their accusations weighed heavily on my heart. Returning home was proving to be more challenging than I'd anticipated. I had always been the dutiful daughter, the one who stepped up when others stepped back. From the moment I moved back into my parents' house, I took on the role of caregiver for my ailing mother. It wasn't an easy job, but it was the right thing to do. But no matter how much effort I put into making things comfortable for her, nothing ever seemed right. Every morning, I would make her favorite breakfast and try to engage her in conversation. But the response was always the same, a muttered complaint about the eggs being too runny or the toast too burnt. I would bite my tongue and nod, promising to do better next time. One evening, as I was cleaning the dishes, I overheard my mother speaking with Clara on the phone. "She just can't do anything right. I don't know why she even bothers." My mother's voice dripped with disdain. Clara, instead of defending me or even staying neutral, added fuel to the fire. "I told you, she's always been this way. You should have just let me handle things." It was heart-wrenching. Here I was, trying my absolute best, sacrificing my personal space, time, and mental well-being, only to be talked about like I was some kind of inconvenience. The whispers and gossiping became a regular occurrence, and every day it wore me down a little more. One particularly grueling day at work, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Clara's name flashed on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I answered, expecting another laundry list of things I had supposedly done wrong. In a tone colder than I'd ever heard, she snapped, "You need to leave. Mom can't stand you being there. You're making everything worse." My heart raced, and for a moment, I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. But then, a spark of anger and defiance ignited within. I was tired of always being the problem, the scapegoat. I responded, my voice firm, "Fine, I'll leave. But I'm taking my things with me." There was a pause, and I could imagine Clara's smug expression shifting to one of surprise. She probably expected me to beg, to apologize, to promise to be better. But those days were over. I was done being the family's invisible, taken-for-granted workhorse. The line went dead, and I took a moment to let it all sink in. It was time to reclaim my life and stop letting others define my worth. The morning sun broke through the blinds, casting warm rays over the living room. It illuminated the flat-screen TV, the couch, and the dining table, all reminders of years of hard work and sacrifice. Today, they became symbols of liberation. I methodically went from room to room. In the kitchen, I unplugged the fridge and microwave, each one a testament to those months I'd skipped outings with friends to save up. There was the coffee machine, my solace on many groggy mornings. The house echoed with memories, some sweet, some bitter, but the bitterness had started to overshadow everything else. My bedroom was next. I remembered buying the bed, picking out the sheets, arranging and rearranging the furniture until everything felt just right. I glanced at the vanity, a gift from my grandmother. It would stay. It wasn't about value, but principle. Just as I was taping up the last box, my phone buzzed to life, breaking the thick silence of the room. I knew who it was even before I checked. Clara's tone had been all sweet talk lately, but the underlying hostility was hard to miss. "You absolute thief!" The venom in her voice was palpable. Calmly, I replied, "Clara, everything I'm taking was bought with my money. I thought you'd be glad to see them go." "You can't just take everything from our family home," she shot back, her voice shrill. I sighed. It's funny how these things suddenly became family items. When I needed some support or a thank you, they were just things. Now that I'm reclaiming them, they're family heirlooms? I could practically see Clara's face turning red with fury. "You're ruining everything, just because of your stupid ego." I laughed, a sound filled with irony and bitterness. "Ego? Clara, if this was about ego, I would have left ages ago. This is about respect, value, and standing up for myself." A scoff came through the line. "Always the martyr, huh? Just return everything and maybe we can talk." Let's be clear. I have receipts for all these items, proof that they're mine. Every dime, every cent went from my pocket. Maybe you should have thought about that before you pushed me away. My voice was steady, but the rage and hurt underpinning it was undeniable. A heavy pause settled between us, thick with unsaid words and emotions. Finally, Clara hissed, "You always have to have the last word, don't you?" "It's not about having the last word," I replied, feeling the weight of years of suppressed feelings pressing down on me. "It's about finally speaking up." With that, I hung up, cutting off any further arguments. The boxes were loaded, the past was behind, and a future, uncertain yet hopeful, awaited. Months had passed since I severed ties with my family, and in that time, I blossomed. My confidence grew stronger each day, and I carved out a life for myself where I was in control and unyielding. My phone remained silent, my family's number blocked, and for the first time in years, I felt true freedom. The next time I saw my family was at my mother's funeral. Dressed in black, I stood apart, an outsider looking in, watching the play of my own family's drama. The air was thick with tension and unsaid words. Everyone seemed to be moving in slow motion, their faces a blur, their words just background noise. The reading of the will was held in the family attorney's chamber. Even though I had no interest in the inheritance, the town's gossip mill ensured I was well informed. Clara was, predictably, the sole beneficiary of everything. But what neither of us had anticipated was the mountain of debt our parents had left behind. The house, with its memories both bitter and sweet, was quickly sold. But even its sale didn't dent the colossal debt that loomed. I watched Clara's face turn from smug satisfaction to pale horror as the attorney listed out every debt, every mortgage, every unpaid bill. I caught snippets of hushed conversations between relatives. Bankruptcy? How did it come to this? Poor Clara, their voices dripping with a mix of pity and schadenfreude. While I felt a pang for the old house, I couldn't deny the grim satisfaction that welled up in me as I saw Clara grappling with this unexpected turn of events. For years, she had reveled in the security and comfort our parents provided, while belittling my every effort to stand on my own. Now, the tables had turned, and life had handed her its own brand of poetic justice. I left the funeral and the reading of the will without a backward glance. The whispers of the town didn't matter, nor did Clara's newfound troubles. I had my life, built brick by brick on my own terms, and nothing was going to shake that foundation. 2 years had swiftly passed since I'd separated from my family. The small apartment I'd initially settled into became too confining as my professional life flourished. Every day, I would catch glimpses of luxurious homes in magazines or on my way to work, and I couldn't help but think about buying my own. With my growing earnings, the idea seemed less of a dream and more of a tangible goal. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I was mindlessly scrolling through my social media when a familiar name popped up on my feed. There was Clara, surrounded by boxes and looking frazzled in front of our old family home. The caption read, "New Beginnings." A couple of mutual friends had commented words of sympathy. It didn't take much digging to figure out she had drowned herself in debt and was forced to put the house up for sale. I was midway through a call with my realtor about a lovely little house in the suburbs when my phone beeped with an incoming call. Clara's name flashed on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Hello?" "Long time," Clara's voice came through, laden with fake cheer. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" I asked, wary. "I need your help," she began. A heavy pause. "I need money." I raised an eyebrow. "We haven't spoken in years, and the first thing you ask for is money?" "We're sisters," she exclaimed, frustration evident. "That didn't seem to matter when you kicked me out," I remarked coldly. "I wouldn't be asking if I had another option," she snapped. "The house needs to be sold, and no one's buying. I'm drowning here." A silence stretched between us. My thoughts raced. "I'm not giving you money," I finally said, voice unwavering. "But I'll offer you a deal." Clara exhaled audibly, waiting. "I'll buy the house, but not at market price, at the minimum you owe. Take it or leave it." Her response was a soft, defeated, "Fine." The following weeks were a blur of paperwork, bank visits, and meetings. The day I received the keys to my childhood home was bittersweet. There was no triumphant return or a celebration, just a silent acknowledgement of all that had transpired. The house, once a symbol of fractured relationships and painful memories, now stood as a testament to my resilience and determination. As I set about making it my own, memories of the past were replaced by plans for the future. There were no more calls or messages from Clara. Our paths had diverged, and perhaps it was for the best. In the ancestral house, now mine, I built my sanctuary. The echoes of laughter and love soon filled its hallways, drowning out the whispers of the past. Forging ahead, my way, on my terms.